Uranus? Uranus?
Yeah,
or
let's say
Uranus?
Let's say Uranus. Just
the way that they pronounce it is closer to Uranus.
But that's because they're Japanese.
Right, but also the Greek way is Uranos.
Okay,
so
we're not Greek either, Robin.
Yeah, Robin! Sorry. Ready? One, two,
okay, let her do it. The thing.
Hey everybody, you're listening to Grow Up, a Saturday morning podcast for importunate millennials with Sailor, me, Katherine Johnson.
With me, Corpse Stick Flobberworm.
And Madeline Slapstick. And we're here with special guest, Oliver Kopsock.
That is Olivia Kopic. She is my younger sister and a guest, our esteemed guest on our show today. She is the scholar in all things Sailor Moon. Olivia, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Tell us, Olivia, who are you?
What
are you?
Well, I am a Sailor Scout in training. Just kidding.
Yes.
I wish
Good.
I was. I am Rubel Kupik's younger sister, and I love all things nostalgic, and I'm happy to be here.
And we are a group of friends that gathers weekly, or as close to weekly as possible, to revisit some favorite forms of media from our childhoods and deconstruct them from adult perspectives, sussing out the themes, images, and messages that we might have missed as kids.
This week we are celebrating LGBTQIA Pride Month by delving into the television show Sailor Moon. That was me pronouncing it phonetically the way that Kylie wrote it.
It's very good. Why did we choose Sailor Moon, everybody?
Because it's gay.
Yeah, I think that's the answer.
That's the reason we did it.
I mean, okay, well, Catherine, you're the one who was really wanting to do this. You probably know more about Sailor Moon than I do. I don't, up until this point, I didn't have a reason for doing Sailor Moon above any other. So what did you have in mind?
Well, so I also knew absolutely nothing about Sailor Moon. Never watched it as a kid.
Uh-huh.
It was just that when I was looking, like, what shows had gay subtext when we were kids, and it's, like, nothing, but Sailor Moon was super gay.
Yeah.
At least the dubbed version was very, very queer.
No, the sub version
dub
was.
or the sub?
Yeah, the sub.
Yeah.
Sub version, yeah.
And then when it got dubbed, they actually changed the characters who are Sailor Neptune and Sailor Uranus, into cousins.
I've got my notes.
Ooh,
You wrote a whole book?
you wrote a whole book.
This is... I did.
Olivia, tell me your experience as a child growing up watching Sailor Moon.
Oh, man. I remember just, like, going with my dad, like, walking to the Blockbuster, whatever, like, corner movie store to, like, rent Sailor Moon videos. And I was always so excited because, like, we didn't have TV. We only ever, like, rented movies. So I was like, oh, yes, I get to rent Sailor Moon. I'm so happy. Like, I fucking loved that show. Like, magical girls, like, with all this lore surrounding them. Like, I loved that growing up. And, oh, man. Like, and because I only ever watched the English dub as well, I, like, it was like, oh, yeah, like, they're cousins. And, like, as a young kid, I was like, what? Are we
They're
sure
really
about
affectionate
that?
cousins. Jeez.
I was like, that doesn't sound right to me. And it wasn't until
That's really interesting to me that
yeah.
as even a child you were like, that doesn't seem quite right.
Yeah. Like, I like, watched the English sub, like, now, recently, and I knew after a long time, like, oh, yeah, in the original, they're lesbian lovers. But, like, I remember watching it as a kid, and I was like, this doesn't, like, okay, so it says they're cousins, but they're acting a lot like lovers. Are they, like, pretending to be cousins when they're actually lovers?
And you actually had this thought as a child? I love that.
I think so, because I was like genuinely like kind of confused as like what was going on.
Can I ask you, Olivia, what effect do you think it had, if any, or watching that and kind of just knowing, well, they are supposed to be lovers? How do you think that affected you growing up in terms of like learning about is gay okay?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I didn't quite understand it. Like, I knew that they were like supposed to be cousins, but I wasn't like exactly sure. Like, I thought there might be something a bit more there, but I just remember like as a kid, like in like early middle school or so, like my friend would like show me like, oh yeah, look at this, like, you know, you have like people shipping couples and it'd be like two guys and I'd be like, oh, that's kind of weird. And she was like, no, it's cute, like, look at them, they're so adorable together. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And like I remember like in elementary school, I was like helping my friend like up on the bars in the playground, and some dude like called me a lesbian because I was like cradling her middle, trying to help her up and holding her up.
You lesbian.
He was like, lesbian. And that kind of scarred me for a hot second in middle school, because I was like, no, I'm not a lesbian. I don't know what that means, but I think it's like not a great word. I wasn't entirely sure
so
what
fun.
it was.
How old were you?
I was like in 4th or 3rd grade. Yeah, and I just remember being called a lesbian, and I was like, I don't know what that means, but I know that it's like negative.
Yeah. Well, that's,
I know it's vaguely negative in the context of our socio-political life. Yeah. My first exposure to homosexuality was actually very, very different because growing up, my mom is a lesbian, and she came out to me when she was about 27, so I was about 6, and she just kind of sat me down on my bed and she was like, look, I need to talk to you about something, and it's kind of serious, but it's not a bad thing. And I was like, okay. And she was like, so it was so funny how she did this. She was like, so mommy like likes girls. And I was like, oh, that's fine. And then she used the word gay. And I started crying because I knew that it was a vaguely negative word in my little elementary school brain. Somebody had just that day told me a joke that was like alluded to Michael Jackson being gay. And so my first thought when my mom said that she was gay was, are you like Michael Jackson? Which even to this day, my mom's like, I don't understand. And I was like, I know, I don't either. It was a stupid little joke that somebody told me.
I remember like another time, like I was just watching, maybe this was like 6th grade or so, I was just watching some other like anime show I'd rented from the library, and it had this guy in it who like cross dresses, and he like loves dressing up as women, and I was watching it and I like didn't see anything wrong with that. I was like, oh, it's just like part of the plot, like he's just like, you know, he's just like this weird like funny guy who just like likes dressing up. And my mom came into the room and she saw me watching it and she recognized what was going on. She's like, no, Olivia, you need to like switch that off right now, turn it off. And I'm like, what?
That's so sad.
It's my TV show I'm watching, there's nothing wrong with this. And so like she had me switch it off, and so I went down into the basement to watch it instead. I was like, can't stop me.
Can't stop me watching my
queer
media.
TV. I will consume gay media, Mom.
See, it's so interesting to like think about that, like children seeking out something that they don't understand so that they can understand it better, as opposed to parents like intentionally shutting that shit down.
Yeah.
Like children are so much more like, they have to be open-minded because they have so much to learn. They can't be stuck in their ways at 5.
Fucking watch me, Madison.
You are not 5.
I've been the same person since I was 5.
You've come
is so
out
not
since
true.
then, my friend.
You didn't know me when I was 5.
No, but I knew you when you were 16 and you weren't out then.
I knew you when you used to dress like Captain Jack Sparrow.
I still think boys are icky.
Boys are icky. Sorry, Robin.
Okay, wait, I'm sorry. Can I just say this? I'm not sure that we've actually fully articulated at this point, but with our celebration of Pride Month, what we are focusing on in this episode of Sailor Moon is the Uranus and Neptune relationship.
Yeah,
Jupiter.
there are more homosexual relationships in this canon, but the one that our episodes really heavily focused on was Haruka
Michiru
and Michiru.
Yeah.
And so we watched episodes 92 through 102 and episode 96.
106.
No,
Or 106.
So what did everybody think of Sailor Moon?
There were some things that I thought were absolutely brilliant. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the style choice to have those beautiful, like, I don't know what, watercolor or pastel painted stills
like the
with just like
that come
beautiful music. Anytime those two beautiful characters were introduced or walked into a place and left a place,
Yeah.
I thought that was just so absolutely brilliant as a storytelling device. I mean, not even talking about the content or whatever. That's just like a really, really beautiful technique.
I really liked how girliness and the prettiness was all, it was like they weaponized it, and it was a positive, and it wasn't just like skin deep.
Yeah.
It was, this is my weapon, and it's really pretty, and
Sailor Moon. And Olivia was on the phone with me last night as I watched this, so I think she has some idea of what I'm going to say. But Sailor Moon exists in the most terrifying dystopian world I have ever known. Okay.
worse than SpongeBob.
Far worse than SpongeBob. First of all, in the world that this exists in, inanimate objects that you are using can just out of nowhere materialize into supervillains who use portals from various body parts to steal your heart.
Yeah, that's horrifying.
You can just be going along your daily life doing whatever you're doing, and no matter what you're doing could at any moment turn into a supervillain with the ability to, again, steal your heart. And you know how this is countered? By a group of, five girls who have the ability to give people heart attacks. They point at things and yell, "Heart attack!" and you have one!
Oh my god.
Now, okay, my sister tried to comfort me and say, okay, but this wouldn't be too terrifying a world because the villains only go after certain people. Yeah, people with pure hearts. So this is a world in which goodness is being actively discouraged. If you are too good, you will be murdered by inanimate objects.
Here's the thing. The Sailor Scouts will always be conveniently there to save you
listen,
and
how many
stop
of them are there? 5? Are we to assume that there are only 5 of these people to counter all of... Okay, and if we're talking about that, that means that there's really only the need for 5 sailors to protect...
technically.
7, technically. Only need 7 to protect from the villains, because there are not that many people with pure hearts going around in this world. There are so few pure-hearted people that they only need 7 sailors to protect the entire 8 billion populous world.
I mean, I think what stands out to me, not just through, this season, but through the whole series, is just how, all, the characters, the Sailor Scouts we see, they're all, very deeply empathetic people who care about others, and, that's the thing. You see these, really strong female characters, and they're not just, stoic and strong, but they're also, empathetic, and they're sensitive, and they're kind, and they have, both strengths. And that's actually something that they bring up in Sailor Moon Crystal, which is the reboot about why Sailor Uranus, about how she is a woman, but she also, like, at the very beginning, they confuse her as a man, but they say that she actually has the strengths of both genders. To quote them, Uranus is both a man and a woman who is a guardian. She's like a man and a woman in one. She has the strengths of both genders, and it's her special advantage as a soldier. And so I think that's really interesting that they kind of, like, bring that up, even, like, in, you know, the original and not just the crystal, as we see her as having both strengths, as she is very strong and she is a bit more, I guess, willing to go after what needs to be done. I think they both are. They're very willing to sacrifice, but she seems a bit more of the kind of taller, you know, stronger, more masculine.
See, yeah, that to me is kind of something that, as I was watching this the first time, I felt a little unresolved in terms of. Did you guys also get that sense? It just felt to me very much like.
I think that they tried to let it, well, from my perspective as an adult now, I think that they were trying to let it stand on its own without making it a big deal. And when you're making children's media, I think that that's an okay path to try to take, because if you do try to make it a thing and make a lesson out of it, instead of just normalizing it, then you do alienate a lot of, like, children who would not be.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing for me, is it felt like such an organic. It felt like such an organic and well introduced relationship that it didn't need to be a thing for it to fully resolve into something. For it to come into view, I think this is one media that it could have done that. You know, in the English version, it struck me as interesting watching this to not just consider their relationship, but also the way that the authors wrote the other characters to react to that relationship, which is to say, with constant disbelief and dismissal. And it sort of was curious to me why they would do that. I guess it's hard for me to put myself in the mindset of a person in that particular period of time, or I guess it's also a different cultural context when they were writing it, but to consider that you would want to have a relationship, a same-sex relationship, be positively portrayed in your media, but then also have all of the other characters actively sort of disparaging it.
But it's never something that disparagement it never shakes their relationship, you know what I mean? It's something that happens on the outside, but never really affects what their relationship is and how strong it is, which I think it's an endorsement that just because you find it unusual doesn't mean that it's not as strong as anything you could, like, anything that these straight girls could have.
I like the way of looking at that.
Because it would be one thing if they were like, oh, wow, you're gay? And then they were like, oh, well. And then, like, if the relationship crumbled at some point in the series, then, like, that's an endorsement that this thing might not work. And the fact that they have this strong couple that stays a couple and stays devoted to one another is really powerful to me.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And actually, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm actually agreeing with you. And I think that's part of the problem. Is I think they have a really well portrayed same-sex relationship in this. It's I think a very strong one, and because of that, I like that. And so then it's just what I'm saying is it is curious to me that in opposition to it, and the reason I'm coming from this place is because, like, you know, the five main characters, the girls that we already have known from the beginning, are meant to serve as sort of like our mouthpiece and, you know, our view piece into the other aspect of these two new people. So, like, as an audience, they're kind of assuming that we would be agreeing with the girls in a way. It just feels more like a wink and a nod to. Yeah, they're assuming that the audience is going to be anti-LGBT in some extent or another, and using that to be relational or familiar with.
Do you think, and anybody jump in on this, do you think that given the political times that this was written and produced, like this started in 1991, didn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think that it was wrong to approach it from that kind of... It does other the relationship. I agree with you, and that's not right, and it's not how you should portray it. But in order to normalize it for people who might not have ever been exposed to LGBT people, do you think that it was the wrong way to present it?
I mean, I feel like no, just because, like, whenever we see them, like, we do have, like, the main Sailor Moon characters who are, like that group of 5 who are, like, oh, 2 women? Like, that's kind of odd. Like, they're not, like, super openly, like, oh, that's terrible. Like, that's so bad. Like,
they're never, like, that.
Yeah. It's just, like, for them, it's just, like, oh, that's not necessarily something I'm used to, which I think is, like, you know, with the audience. But, like, whenever we see Haruka and Michiru, or, like, Uranus and Neptune together, like, you have these beautiful rose petals, like Robin was saying, and it makes the relationship look beautiful. You're not making them seem like these bad guys, like, because whenever Uranus and Neptune interact with the other Sailor Guardians, they are kind of seen as, like, not necessarily bad, but not great either, because they're willing to sacrifice other people, and this is a point of tension between them and the other Sailor Guardians. But whereas when you see Michiru and Haruka together, it's beautiful. They love seeing them together, and there's, like, you know, this beautiful scene, and they're like, oh my gosh, we look up to them so much. And you even have Makoto, Sailor Jupiter, who, like, almost, I wouldn't say she has, like, almost a crush, like, on Haruka, but she just looks up to her so much, because here is somebody else who is a woman and who is beautiful and elegant and graceful, but she's also very strong, and they both have great fighting skills. And Makoto has been bullied over this. She's, like, you know, been a bit of an outcast in social circles because she's a really tall girl, and she even learned to cook so that she could be seen as more feminine. And so now here comes Haruka, who's really cool, like this really cool person who's just exudes confidence and is a woman, and she's tall, and she does race cars, and she's really strong. And so Makoto just latches on to her because she loves that. She's like, this is her role model for her, somebody who's like her. And so I love that, the fact that you're showing, like, you know, women who aren't just girly girls, but, like, who are a bit of a tomboy, and that's okay, like, having them in a role model position.
Actually, to keep going, this is just related to what we have been talking about, so it's just a continuation. But one thing that I wanted to say, I did think it was interesting that the Haruka was portrayed as the most amoral of the sailors.
That's Uranus, right?
Yeah, Uranus. She was the one who said, they're sacrificing themselves for us. Let's take the opportunity, you know? She's the one who said, I hadn't
even thought about that.
We need to sacrifice her. If we can get the talisman, she needs to die.
Yeah. I mean, and that's true of both Uranus and Neptune. I think we see it more in Uranus, but it is true that their goal is, and I don't know if we were able to see, like, the final episodes, but their goal is to find the talisman and summon the Messiah. And so the talisman appears when they've found the pure heart. And so the thing is, spoiler alert, we get to the end of the seasons, it's actually Sailor Uranus and Neptune who have the pure hearts, and they're the ones who have the talismans, and so they sacrifice themselves. And so the reason why they didn't really want to team up with the Sailor Guardians in the first place is because they knew that they were too empathetic and sensitive to other people, that they wouldn't be able to do what was necessary and to sacrifice other people for the greater good. And so I think there is a bit of that cold-heartedness, but they kind of need that to be able to do what is necessary to save the world.
Right. Yeah, and I was thinking about that because my first impression of that when I first had that thought was, makes me uncomfortable that these two characters being portrayed as less moral but still sailors are more amoral, are the gay characters. But then also it is an accurate representation of the way that a lot of marginalized people have to be in order to survive in the world.
That's what I was gonna say.
Sorry, I stole your
You
words.
poop shoot. But yeah, I was thinking like this might be a stretch because I haven't seen the rest of the show, but also that you face a tougher climb when you're othered in that way, and so you can become more cold-hearted, but I think it's just because you see the world more clearly because you don't have the same privileges. And I was just because I just like clicked without thinking, clicked over to Facebook just now, and like number one trending is Morgan Freeman saying I did not assault those women, and I was just like thinking about how often men, when I say something like, oh, he just said that shitty thing to me because I'm a girl, and men around me are like, why do you just assume the worst, like, and stuff, why do you assume the worst in that man? It had nothing to do with you being a girl. And it's like, no, I'm being cold-hearted like that because I know this.
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman absolutely assaulted those women. I think they're equally pure of heart even though they're a little more calloused.
Which,
Yeah.
I mean,
I would
also,
agree with
like,
that.
it's not entirely black and white, like with the first 3 seasons you have like, the 5, like the main guardians who are like very like goody they have their character flaws, like whatever, but they are just like, very like good girls, like they are very pure-hearted. And so I think it is good to have other women in the show that are still good guys without being perfect,
Yeah.
I think
I
it's
agree with that.
important.
Also, when Uranus remembers what Sailor Moon had said in the car about those who are trampled underneath need help too, or whatever, and her remembering that sort of gave her, the strength and the go-ahead to care about Sailor, like just because it, to speak of it in terms of a symbol for LGBT, the understanding and empathy that you have with other people who have been marginalized is what got her to go back for Sailor Moon at the end of that arc.
And also I think what's important, what we're not seeing here, is we're only seeing the parts where there is a bit more tension between Uranus and Neptune and the rest of the Guardians because of their mission. But throughout the rest of the series after this, whenever we see them, because Sailor Moon is their princess that they serve, once they have found their mission and they find out that, spoilers once again, Sailor Moon is the Messiah that they needed to help save the world, they are loyal to her and they love her and they and they are able to open up more with their relationship, because right now they're so focused on the end of the world and being like scared that like their world is going to end, and this is like very important, and they kind of have to put their relationship on hold. So when people ask them if they're lovers, they're like, no, because like as much as
that's not important right now.
Exactly.
This is
as much as they want to be lovers, they can't allow themselves that privilege because they're trying to like find the talismans and save the world. But once that is over, they do allow themselves to be in love and be in a relationship. And at the very like last episode of the whole series, or I don't know if it's the very last, when you have this massive fight scene, they are once again sacrificing each other, sacrificing themselves to save both each other and Sailor Moon. And like in their last like moments, they're holding hands, and it's just such a powerful part. But you see like through the rest of the series just how much like they care about each other, and just sweet little moments. And another character that they see where Michiru asks Haruka, oh, are you getting jealous? And just
like in that when we first meet them, and one of them's asking like, oh, are you guys dating? Please say you're not dating. Is she your girlfriend? And Uranus is like, says something like, oh, she's more than that, really. And that's when we first meet them, is saying like she's more than my girlfriend, and you see that very quickly, that it's very like when she throws the lemon at her and she's playing violin. Like their relationship is very profound and
like from the very start of when we first see them, like from the very beginning of what we see, they're already in a very mature place in their relationship. Because we never see anything as silly or as petty as Usagi and Mamo.
Yeah, Mamoru.
Tuxedo Mask.
yeah, like
Oh God.
with the burnt cookies and the screaming,
Or
and
like,
the-
do you remember our first kiss? And he's like, no. And she's like,
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
because when he first kissed her, it was actually, she was unconscious and he needed to revive her from like a deep sleep. And so that's why he's like, don't worry about it. Because like she doesn't remember
oh,
it.
that's funny,
Yeah.
actually.
But yeah.
I don't know if you guys will like this. When I was watching it, I was like, oh, it would be interesting on the podcast, since there was so much importance placed on first kisses, if everyone said their first kisses.
No.
No,
I'm
yeah, let's
fine.
do it. I'll do it.
No.
Well, how about anybody who wants to abstain from it can? But
Okay, it could just be me and Kylie if you want.
yeah,
Kylie, what was yours? I don't know yours.
it was my first like real kiss was my high school boyfriend Kyle.
Okay.
In the front seat of his truck at Red Robin.
Like a teenage dream.
Like a teenage dream. Yeah. We had just had dinner, which I paid for.
Oh my god.
Nice.
And then he looked over and was like, I'd like to kiss you now. And I was like, okay.
Oh my god.
Yeah. It was stupid. That's why I went, ugh. But, I mean, it was fine. It was a weird teenage thing. I've had many better kisses since then. How about you, Catherine?
My first kiss was when I was 12.
Oh.
Uh,
Wait, is this a cute story or not?
It's kind of gross.
Oh, no.
It was like me and my friends for one summer got this other group of friends and we merged.
Mm-hmm.
And I was standing in like a kiddie pool.
Oh.
And it was this guy named Bubba.
Oh my God. Yes.
And he
I'm
was,
so
like,
glad your
young-
first kiss was a guy named Bubba.
He was like a year younger than me and a solid like
Makes me
foot shorter
so
than me.
happy.
And I'm using air quotes here. Everyone wanted us to date.
Oh.
And so everyone was like, kiss, 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 kiss. So I kissed Baba in the pool. I hated it so much.
Oh.
And I just like thinking about it now, I'm like, oh god. And I went home and I had, undiagnosed anxiety my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like felt so sick because I was not allowed to date or anything like that until I was like 16. And so I just felt like so guilty, and to the point that I like told my mom I was sick and like made her take care of me.
Oh.
But I think a big part of it also was that I was gay
Yeah.
and felt incredibly uncomfortable in the situation. My parents don't know this story. If they listen to this, they'll hear it, but I don't think they'll care anymore.
Right.
But then my first kiss with a girl, well, like you were there, Kylie. You were in the car. It was our first bout of young teenage drunkenness. Me and one of our friends kissed in the back of the car, and that was my first female kiss when I was 18.
I guess I definitely, I'm not going to use names, but I've definitely kissed girls before I ever kissed a boy, for sure.
You didn't kiss me.
Yes.
Here's the thing. Catherine had a phase in her life where she kissed everybody she met for about 5 years.
That
sounds about right.
I haven't kissed Robin or Olivia.
How dare you?
But like the list of
how dare you?
and the list of like roommates and friends I haven't kissed is pretty much just the friends I've made in the last couple of years since I decided this was unruly behavior. I once like was walking through a Jack in the Box parking lot in the middle of the night drunk and kissed like everybody in the drive-through line.
That is so funny.
I hate drunk me
Lord have mercy.
so much.
You are a kissy moo-moo.
Drunk me controlled my life for years and years. But I've only kissed like...
But I mean, as far as like drunken behavior is concerned, that is pretty tame.
Yeah, I've done worse things when I'm drunk, you know.
That's true.
But like in the last year, I think I've only kissed like 3 people, so...
Yeah.
Decided not to just kiss people at random.
What? Why not?
I just decided
You
that
didn't
it's
like
not
it.
as frivolous. Well, so this is tying back into the show, is that I decided that, like, kissing isn't as frivolous as I used to think.
Mm-hmm.
It used to just be whatever. It's not going further than that. It's
Right.
just kissing. I'll kiss everybody. And then I eventually realized, like, no, like, I want that to mean something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, Robin and I were talking about how, like, this girl, like, loses her impurity when she just wants to, like, kiss. I want to kiss anyone. Doesn't matter who. I just want to kiss.
That's me. That's me. That was me.
This is her pure heart crystal. And she's like, I'll kiss anybody. And so now she's impure.
Yeah, I did. It just struck me as odd that was... Because this is another one of those things that felt like it was running counter to the positive aspects of it, where it seemed to me that they were like making chastity and like pure-heartedness not wanting to be overtly sexual as good, and anything to do with being sexual as bad,
while simultaneously putting them in these really skimpy outfits.
Yeah.
But also, cleavage synonymous with evil? Because we have, like, that one lady, like, in red, Kaori Knight, she has boobs for days. And, like, she's a very evil lady. And I think, let me see if the other witches have it. Maybe not, but yeah, she got the boobs.
I wonder if the sexuality is really tied to evil or if it's tied to power.
Oh.
Because we see the Sailor Scouts transform into the Sailor Scouts and become more sexualized. Yeah. When they're more powerful. And I don't know if that's actually changing my mind about a lot of the things I wrote down. I'm like processing things as I speak, but like, cause I was like uncomfortable with how sexualized they were, but in the context of that meaning power, that does not bother me.
That's interesting that you bring that up now, because now I'm remembering to like the very final episodes of the whole series, like when Sailor Moon, like, there's this massive battle that goes down, and, like, spoilers again, pretty much everybody dies, and she is completely naked, and she's trying to embrace this dark, evil person and show her that it's okay, that Sailor Moon still loves her. And so, like, Sailor Moon is completely naked at this point, but it's not like, it's a sign of innocence and purity of being completely naked. It's not something like that's super sexual. It is what it is. It's a signal of like of rebirth. And I think that's really interesting. And they have that multiple times throughout the series where she will be like completely naked, and it's a signal of innocence and rebirth.
You know, what's interesting, I was looking up like symbols in Sailor Moon, and if I'm remembering correctly, because it's like butterflies are in it a lot, and those are also a symbol of rebirth apparently. Oh yeah, because of cocoons. I was like, I don't know why, but yeah, so that's interesting.
What do you guys think? I'm gonna steer the conversation. just a little
Towards
bit.
yourself?
Towards myself. No.
What do you guys think about me today?
No, towards a conversation that I kept coming across on the internet in my research. What do you guys think of this show as a feminist show? Like, in terms of budding young feminists, how do you
I'm
think
not a feminist.
How do you feel that this would have affected you as a child, or like what kind of thinking? I don't know how to word this because I think that the feminism in this show is flawed.
Yeah.
But I think that for children, it's a good start.
Especially given the time period.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So what do you guys think of this as a feminist show?
Well, Olivia, you are the one who watched this growing up. Can you speak to that with
Olivia,
any
you
experience?
talk.
Yeah, I mean, like, from my point of view, like, growing up with this show, I think it was very powerful to me because, like, I loved Sailor Moon Usagi, and I thought, like, I equal parts, like, loved her because, like, she was the leader and she was the main one, but at the same time, I would get so annoyed with her sometimes because she was such a crybaby, and she would just, like, be so annoying, but, like, I also loved her. And I think Sailor Neptune was also my other favorite of the Sailor Scouts because she was so elegant and graceful and powerful. And I think growing up as a kid, having these strong female role models who weren't just, you know, like these badass women who say nothing and are basically just men, but are women and they're just strong and they don't have anything other than that they're strong. But like, no, they have character to them and they are very strong women who also have distinct personalities, whether that's like chasing after boys or just like being ditzy or whatever. Like, I felt like I could connect to them as a kid, and it was like, yeah, I'm like that. I'm a little wacky. I like having fun with my friends. But they were also like very strong, badass young women who could like fight these monsters all the time. And like, we see a lot of character development in Sailor Moon from the very beginning of the series, when she is so much more of a crybaby, to the very end when she becomes so empathetic and caring towards other people. And that is her main strength over and over again, is her empathy for other people and loving them, even when they are the bad guys, and still wanting to save them. And so I think that was very formative for me as well, is because I think now that I've grown up, I've become a very empathetic person and very like sensitive to how others feel. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe like Sailor Moon was the reason for that, because she was like, it showed that your empathy and your feminine strengths were just that. They were strengths. They weren't weaknesses, that they could be like used for good, that how you feel, like, you know, crying and the fact that you get emotional about stuff is good because it means that you care.
How, in your opinion, did watching it, with all those things that you just said, relate to the context that you were watching it in? Just to say, like, our family. How did it, for instance, I know that I made fun of you for watching it a lot when we were younger.
You bad boy.
I was
You nasty sack.
unkind about it. But I'm wondering, yeah, like how those two interplayed with each other.
I mean, I think there were at times in my life when I'd be like a bit ashamed that I would be watching Sailor Moon anime. But then I also kind of learned to be like, yeah, I'm a cool kid. I watch Sailor Moon. What are you gonna do about it? It's a great show. And like...
Yeah.
I want to think. So you walked into rooms and announced this, is what you're saying?
Not exactly.
Because you know how, like, to bring back a throwback, in Pokemon, you know, people always, like, announce themselves when they enter a room. So Olivia, like, came into, like, 2nd grade and, like, threw her shit down on the desk and was like, I'm Olivia. Yeah, I like Sailor Moon,
Honestly,
but I'm cool. That
I
makes Sailor
wouldn't be
Moon cool.
surprised if
got
I
a problem
actually
with
did
that?
that.
And then she sat down and took her
I
pencil
was very fearless as a little child, and I think I kind of lost that fearlessness as I grew up, like when I became in high school or whatever, and when I went into college and I realized, oh wow, I have panic attacks. That's cool. And like, you know, you grow up, you lose that fearlessness that you have as a little child. But that was, yeah, I think I was very fearless as a little child. I remember one time, like first grade on the playground, like some kid was bullying me and my friends. And I was like, oh, I gotta take your shit. And I kicked him in the balls. And he didn't tell the preschool. He didn't tell
Was
the
it
first
Robin?
grade dude.
Was it Robin? It was Robin,
It was
wasn't
not. I would never do that. I loved my brothers too much. However much they would hurt me.
I was thinking about that this morning of like that so many of these shows revolve around like good versus evil, and you can be a teen with attitude and defeat Zordon or whatever, and then but yeah, like so many kids shows are about like being greater than yourself and these high stakes and saving the world. And then you thinking about like shows I watched when I was a teenager, it was like fucking Glee and
Yeah.
Degrassi.
The
And
stakes
so-
are regional Glee Club competition.
Very
Guys.
social.
We have to be ready for sectionals. And so I was just thinking about that when Olivia was saying that you have this fearlessness when you're a kid, and I don't know if it's a reflection of, or if it causes it, or if it's a little bit of both, that what we consume when we get older turns to Degrassi. And by all means, Degrassi taught me not to start a knife fight at prom.
That is very important to know.
Yeah.
You need to not start knife fights at prom.
But I don't know if that's like as spiritual a lesson as, you know, I can save the world even though I wear a man's uniform to school.
You've been listening to Grow Up, a Saturday morning podcast for importunate millennials with Oliver Kopsock.
Sailor me, Katherine Johnson.
Corpse stick flobberworm.
And Madeline Slapstick.
Jesus Christ. This episode featured the song Enthusiast by the band Tours.
Now that we're up and running, tweet us the name of your favorite television show, movie, book, video game, or comic book to @GrowThePodUp. Or send us a voice message with your suggestions and your reasoning behind them to growthepodup@gmail.com. And we'll add it to our list. And maybe we'll share your voice on the air.